The stats in terms of the number of people who, whilst watching live games around the world, are also interacting on their phone or their tablet is quite extraordinary. I mean, in the 2014 competition, I think over 91% of people watching live games were also on their phones. And that, if you think about it, is an extraordinary statistic. So people are watching the game, whether it's at home or in a bar or whatever, but they're also on social media, they're blogging, they're tweeting, they're looking at apps, which of course carry advertising. They are getting involved with debates. And what smart brands do is they piggyback onto other people's conversations.
They're not direct sponsors, but they're kind of indirectly involved.
They're listening to what's going on social media, and then they're planting their messages in very, very at specific times in specific places to benefit their brand.
So FIFA loses out here.
Well, FIFA manage the rules and regulations with a rod of iron. There's no doubt about that. But there are still things that brands can do and opportunities for brands who are not official sponsors without breaking the rules.
So give me an example of what you might...
I knew you were going to say that.
Give me an example of what you might advise, I don't know, a financial services company that might want to use the World Cup in some way to put its brand out there.
If I'm a brand and I'm listening to a conversation that's going on because there's been some drama in a game between two very high-profile and, in brackets, highly paid players, and the debate turns into one about motivation and money, for example, perhaps if I'm a financial services operator company whose business is to lend money or something, perhaps that's a conversation that I might want to enter into on the basis of responsible lending or whatever it might be. And I'm sort of making that particular example up, but it's all about listening to the conversation in real time and then tapping into it at that specific moment.
When you say conversation, you mean the conversation on social media?
Yes, on social media, sorry.
So that's quite interesting because the timing then changes as well, doesn't it? I imagine sponsorship deals usually are sort of years in the making,
right.
But you're looking at sort of very short time frames. These brands have to jump in at really short notice.
Absolutely. So think about the fact that this tournament is going to be in Russia, which means that about 40% of the people who will watch the games will not be watching them live because they'll be asleep. So how will they watch the games? Well, they'll watch them in a number of different ways, but I think that social media and many of the apps that are available, which will show highlights, which will show goals, which will show moments of controversy or what have you, that's really a massive opportunity.
And cheaper? Is it cheaper
Absolutely.
To do it this way? A lot cheaper?
A lot cheaper.
How much cheaper?
I think Vivo are said to have committed $400 million.
This is the Chinese mobile phone company.
This is the Chinese mobile phone company. And they've committed $400 million, not just for the World Cup,
as an
I understand
official sponsor of the
correct, over a 4-year period. Now, that's a lot of money, even for the world's biggest brands. That's a significant amount of money and a very large percentage, I suspect, of their communication budget. So, that's a big bet.
So it sounds like the winners here are the brands because they're, as you say, they're piggybacking off this whole event on the cheap.
Absolutely. I think the brands, but also I think the consumers. I think that the people watching the game, one of the great things for the brands, I think, is that it's not just people having a conversation on social media. It's that they're fired up, they're highly charged because their team or the player who they most like or dislike is involved. So you're participating in a conversation at a moment when emotions are running high.
Is there something to be said about the fact that a lot of the players are actually a bigger brand than the World Cup itself?
Well, I think that's absolutely right. When you look at the number of followers, for example, that the world's top footballers like Ronaldo currently have. So Ronaldo, I think, has 128 million followers on social media, which compared to FIFA or one of the big national sides, England, Portugal, and so they typically have about 2 million. So I think, one, there's simply the scale of the interest in the players and the big clubs is far, far greater than in the national teams because national football has definitely declined in interest. But I also think it's a factor that the national teams have done a less good job at giving supporters a peek behind what's happening off the pitch and what's happening in the lives of the players and the preparation for the games and all that sort of thing.
It's all part of the story.
It's all part of the story, and I don't think that they've really understood properly the opportunity and the thirst for that information and that knowledge from supporters, which definitely exists.
So would it make more sense then for a sponsor to sponsor or to get some kind of agreement with a player rather than a team or with an event?
I think one of the things that's going to be very interesting during the World Cup is how some of the players' sponsors leverage the opportunities of their player during the tournament rather than their team, the national team that player plays for. So I think absolutely that's going to be a very interesting part of it. And again, social media will be the dominant force there in terms of where the action is.